topics. And the topic of the day is UX in Web3 with a special focus on UX in apps and protocols. This is the core focus of our guest today, Luc de Leyritz. Hi, Luc. It's a pleasure to have you there today.
Thanks, Raph, for this awesome intro, and thanks for positioning a little bit how you guys, all the things you guys do. It's yeah, super happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, maybe you want to start immediately with a very quick intro.
Yeah, I'll tell you
Yeah.
who I am and what we do at Re7, and then we can dive into the specifics. The quick intro to me is I've been investing at the pre-seed seed stages for the past 5 years, of which the past 3.5 specifically in crypto. I currently do it within a fund called Re7, RE7, which is a big liquidity provision fund that's been around for around 5 years and now controls over $500 million in assets across a bunch of different strategies, but mostly DeFi liquidity provision, as well as recently sort of long liquid. And I lead the venture fund that we're building and that we're raising at the moment, that we raised a significant chunk of already and that we're deploying. And this venture fund, and we'll get to that afterwards, is very tightly focused on this idea of good user experience and especially at the consumer level. Before being at Re7, I was with a fund called Cherry Crypto that we set up within a broader venture fund called Cherry Ventures. It's a fund, a European fund that's 10 years old. It's 1.5 billion AUM, and we built a crypto fund basically under the umbrella of Cherry, from which we invested in companies like Morpho, CowSwap, Maple Finance, and a bunch of others. And before that, I was in traditional venture, investing in data infrastructure, fintech. So a little bit less UX heavy, I would say. But already then, it's funny because I looked at all my notes that I've been taking over the years on the topic of UX, and actually this is the first time that I really went deep on the idea of audio as a new interface, and so that was already a kind of a part of it. And before that, very quickly, I was with the French Army for a couple of years, sort of the DARPA equivalent for the French Army, doing advanced tech research for national security. And my academic background is mostly philosophy with a little bit of formal logic, statistics, and programming. So that's me. That's the fund. Yeah, we take this however you guys want to do it. I think I'm sure Raph,
it will be organic and very grassroots.
Yeah.
The idea is that we don't enter into keynote or a discussion between you and I. The idea is that from the get-go, we have people engaging with you and asking questions. And maybe to set the stage, I just want to make sure that we have also a good UX here in this type of Zoom format, which is not very easy, but let's try to do our best. So first, it starts with a good microphone. So I hope that you can hear me well, guys. And second thing, sorry. What I will do, I will just highlight a couple issues that I believe are some issues we are facing in UX in Web3, and you will grade them from 0 being a non-issue to 5 being like a very hard issue. Are you okay for that?
Yeah. Is that me or is that everyone?
Yeah, you.
Okay, that's me. Beautiful. It's also a kind of housekeeping thing, but it would be awesome when we go to questions. I think we have time and we're not so many in the room. So before any of you ask a question, it'd be awesome if you can also, tell us all high level, what you do and who you are. That I think that'd be also super, interesting for me to get a sense, and I'm sure for others as well. But let's start the rapid fire on the UX issues.
Exactly. Yeah, so this is what I'm gonna do just now. So yeah, please mention your name and what you are building in in 1 or 2 bullet points maximum. And also because you are mentioning the time, I am mindful of everyone's time. So we have up to an hour, but in case we believe that we came to a conclusion earlier than that, we are happy to to shorten the event and make it like only 40 minutes, 45 minutes, or even less than this. We just want to make sure that everyone is at ease, and we don't want to brute force people to stay in the room and ask questions that are potentially a bit forced. So yeah, this is something we want to change as well. It's not a 1 hour format; it's up to an hour. Okay, so all right, so a few high-level issues, I believe, are some issues. So trust building challenges.
So 5, Yeah.
Five is
It's,
like the biggest problem, and zero is something that is already achieved as an issue and addressed, I would say, or a
yeah.
non-existing problem.
Yeah, I think it's five.
It's
I think
five.
it's five. I'll give you yeah, I think it's five, and it's I mean this one is an easy one because I have the market to back me up. And so the reason why I think it's five is as soon as someone finds a way to solve the trust issue, and there's a bunch of interesting mechanisms to go about it, you see a lot of money being made. I think the clearest example of that was Pump.fun, right? Like
Yeah.
Pump.fun is like a horrible interface. It's not a nice product to use. It's not particularly fun. It's kind of brain damaging. But what they did, I think, and that probably is the main thing they did really, really well, is they solved a trust issue, small, super small trust issue, the rug issue, right? That you can take the liquidity from the tokens you launch, and that's 600 million in revenue for this company.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I don't know how many additional billions in trading volume. So I think it's like such a clear sort of indication of that specific like
Mm.
there's so much to do there.
Yeah, superb. Thank you. Let's take a couple more. And I like the way you grade and give an illustration. So let's continue like this. Private key management complexity.
That's a good one. I actually don't think this one is that big of a deal anymore. It's probably between a two and a three. Let's put it at 2.5. Um, and the reason why I don't think it's that much of an issue anymore is now you have these like embedded wallet providers. I think the clearest one is Privy, and what these guys offer for those of you who don't know, they let you as an application create a wallet for your users based on their social login or their email address, and the users don't really have to ever see the private key. The clearest example of that, illustration wise, would be Farcaster's recent embedded wallet. So Farcaster had no wallet. They created one, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 weeks ago now. And, instantly 80,000 people had a wallet. They have no idea where the private key is. And frankly, they don't and shouldn't care about it. And that's really created a whole thing around tokens and yeah
Yeah.
let's not go there, but I think that's one. Where it's still an issue, I would say, is actually where I've seen the biggest issues on that is on the institutional side. You'd be surprised by how much, as if you want a bit of a more serious setup like custody and sort of compliant custody especially, I think still very few companies are set up properly to do it. So still 2.5, I'd say.
2.5. Okay, thanks. This one is kind of related. Let's say technical onboarding barriers.
Technical and warning barriers. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's kind of related, so maybe you've already like
Yeah.
50% answered.
No, I think this one is also a good one, right? I think this one is a really good one, actually. I think this is probably a much. Let me re-rate my previous answer. From the point of view of a builder, right? If I'm someone who wants to build a good application, I think now seed phrase management is basically zero on the issue because you can just use Privy or one out of the box, even one of these out of the box embedded wallet providers. The technical barrier to entry, I think, is still massive because I'll give you a simple example here. My sister, I'm actually at her place right now. Um, she has a bunch of ETH. She needs liquidity. She's going to get married, and she wants to borrow against her ETH. That sounds like a super good idea, right? And she has no idea how to do it. And so it's really hard. Like the point here is you have a sophisticated investor with a bunch of money in Ethereum. Um, it's on Revolut, and it's not like it's too hard for her to do things. She doesn't even know where to start, right? This is not part of the mental universe of things you can do. You don't know which you don't know that there's a button for you to click somewhere, right? And yeah, this is someone who knows about Morpho, knows about Aave, but just
Mm.
the technical, I think, limitations, yes, are still really really big. So I'd put it as actually the biggest, the five.
Five as well. Okay,
Yeah.
thanks. Um, this let's say this last one is kind of related as well because I mean we are actually talking about one core topic, so they are all related in some ways. Let's say that error handling is opaque. I mean the opaqueness of error handling. Let's say you want to do a transaction, it doesn't go through. You are not very well equipped to understand why and what to do next. Is that a big of an
Yeah.
issue?
It's funny. I mean, it's funny you ask because I have so many illustrations that happened to me yesterday. Um, to a Yeah, I think it's a massive issue. I mean, it's like, and it's funny because I think it's also a totally under discussed one. So I think it's a really good one to bring up. Um, we're replacing all these financial systems with automated stuff, but that also means, there's no one to call when problem happen. Just yesterday, very sophisticated friend, been in crypto for, years now, probably 2017. It was the first time he came, trying to bridge money from I think Solana to Base, from Solana to Ethereum. No, Base to Ethereum. You'd expect like a super easy transaction. Was routed through a bridge I haven't heard about before. I don't remember it now. But yeah, it took like 18 minutes.
Mm,
And you go to this Explorer page and you have literally no ideas, right? You see, and this is a pretty good Explorer page, by the way. It's like, it looks nice. You see this progress bar that says like confirmations. You're stacking, like you need 20,000 confirmations. You have no idea what's going on. I mean, this could have never arrived, and he would have been screwed. So
mm.
yeah, I think it's a really big one.
Okay, so how much is it? Five and
Five.
a half on five?
Yeah. Like, the reason why I don't want to say five or five and a half is like, I think this is still so much on the outlier side of
Mm,
things that I don't think it's an issue that most people encounter. This being said, once again, I was preparing this session very thoroughly, and I found one of the very old Vitalik posts, I think from 2021, where he made this argument, which I thought was an interesting argument, that UX is not, when you think about UX, you should be thinking about, in crypto UX in particular, you shouldn't be thinking about the average case. You should be thinking about the worst case scenario.
mm,
And if that's the case, well, then, it's a really bad score.
Yeah, perfect. All right, so that's kind of done for me when it comes to the, let's say, intro, the gamified intro, interactive intro. So please ask your burning questions right now to Luc. That's the whole idea and the whole concept of the VC office hours. So just let's say raise your hand, pick up your microphone, and just introduce yourself very briefly, as Luc was asking before, and ask your question. Try to be spot on. Don't spend too much time on the context, but let's make it spot on and interactive. So who wants to go first? If everybody is shy, I have a couple questions.
I'll gladly go if that's fine for
Yeah,
everyone.
please, Hugo, please go ahead.
So first of all, thank you for setting up the call. Thank you, Luke, for coming as well. I'm Hugo. I work with Anchor, and we're building a new L1 called Nura with MEV and OEV redistribution. And we're currently in talks with GFX/Oku Trade to basically have Morpho on our layer one. And I was curious about if you had any advice on go-to-market for Morpho on a new layer one with interesting yield redistribution.
Yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. I think it's a great question because what I would ask is like, why should they do the integration? Like, what's the reason why you think it's a compelling offer for them to be considering?
Well, first one is since we will have a permission validator set, we will be able to control MEV and OEV. And so we plan on incentivizing lending markets, including Morpho on this level. So I think increased yield for users and protocol is definitely one of the main arguments.
And
in
do you
this
have
case.
do you guys have a sense of how much yield that would be?
I could not tell you just like this right now.
Because I think that's probably the core of it, right? It's like, either I think there's sort of three reasons why Morpho would deploy on the chain, in my opinion. One is because they have to. there's so many users, and that you know, the demand is basically being pulled out of them. In which case, you know, you just do it. Although Morpho has been very opinionated with regards to deployment, and the amount of pool needed was extremely high. From what I've seen internally, the first chain they deployed to was Base, and it was very strong reasons, very sort of compelling reasons for them to do it that we, you know, learned about after they launched. So I think that's the first reason. The second is when there are a very obvious case of, you know, you're going to get so much TVL that, you know, it's going to make a very meaningful dent in the overall TVL number. And I guess that's where we go back to how much incentives can you distribute? Because if you can distribute 10 million incentives, it's a very different story than if it's 100 million or you know, a billion or whatever, right? And then the third reason is just commercial agreements, right? But I think that is kind of ties together with the second one, to be honest. So yeah, I would just make it super clear. I would have a very good sense of how much money is going to be directed to incentives and to them specifically. To be honest, it might also be worth going through people like us. And I mean, kind of talking not with the VC hat here, but Re7 does a lot of liquidity provision. We're like a vault curator on Morpho, on Euler, and a bunch of others. And like typically the way, I mean, what I've been seeing, right? I'm not totally privy to this world. This is not what I do, but what I see is an easy way to go about this is to go to the curators and basically tell them, hey, we're willing to distribute X amount through you. Help us deploy this protocol on our chain. In which case, you should chat with we should chat with the liquidity team, and I'd be very happy to make the intro if it's not here already.
Would love to. And one question: when you mention Morpho deployment on the new chain, do you mean front end or just contract deployment?
Both.
Okay.
Both. And as far as I understand, Morpho doesn't even deploy front end. Like the front end, it has to be taken care of by the.
Yeah, we're in talks with Oku Trade for the front end anyway. So this is taken care of. Yeah.
No, this is for the smart contract.
Okay. Well.
Do you have a question related to the front end of your product, Hugo, that you want to ask to Luc? We were mostly talking about, let's say, the agreement behind and the distribution, but about the experience itself.
Yeah.
Do you have already an idea of how you want to go about it?
I think Morpho front ends are quite straightforward, but if you, with experience with Re7, if you have any also advice on how to best include Morpho either in the ecosystem for users or with the front end, I'm also very keen on learning more.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'd turn it a little bit on its head for you, and I would say when it comes to DeFi, a underappreciated UX consideration is for people like us. And I'll give you an example there. We're super active. We're providing a lot of liquidity on Base, a lot of liquidity on Solana, and obviously on Ethereum as well. It's night and day, some of these ecosystems in terms of it's not developer experience, it's not user experience, it's sort of DeFi experience, quote unquote, right? It's like, you know, the stuff that matters to people that provide liquidity and do a lot of transactions. You know, if you can set yourself in a way that is, you know, the Explorer is super easy to use and the multi-sig setups are easy to do. Basically think about UX from the perspective of liquidity providers. Basically, I think would be an interesting angle because it's an overlooked one, and at the end of the day, they will make a big difference. And I expect their importance to go sort of increasing rather than decreasing.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Luc. Thanks, Hugo, for the question. Jamie, you wanted to go next, right? Are you still there? Oh, maybe he has left. All right, so we come back to you, Jamie, afterwards. So who's next? Who would like to ask a question to Luc when it comes to UX? Oh, shy people. Okay.
Can I ask a question then?
Who?
I want to ask a question.
Oh, yeah. I was looking at the doc. Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah, I want to ask you guys, like, what's the what's any product you discovered recently? You know what? Maybe I'll ask and then we can go for Jamie's question. But I'm curious. Think about it then when Jamie asks his question. But I'm curious if you guys have recently started using a crypto product that's become like a bit of a regular thing that you use, and I'd love to hear what it is and what you like about it. Recent being probably in the past like 12 months or so. But Jamie, you we remember you had a question. So if you wanna go ahead.
I did. I was hiding. I guess I was hiding there for a little while, but I'm back now. It's not something I'm working on directly at the moment, but something I'm finding kind of interesting that I'd like to put to you, and I think it feeds into the question you just asked there as well, is this sort of broad umbrella of account abstraction, and sort of seeing a number of developments like being able to provide natural language
Jamie,
instructions
excuse me, sorry to
a
Jamie,
wallet that's sort of powered by.
Jamie, sorry to interrupt you. Can you just very briefly explain who you are, what you are building before getting into your question, if you don't mind? Sorry to interrupt you.
Sure. I've got a few things. Yeah, sure. I'm a long-time TradFi guy. I've been in this space for about 5 years, mostly in the institutional grade crypto space, tokenization, RWAs, etc. But I am sort of, I guess, part of the founding team of 2 early stage projects. One of them is sort of an AI-powered backed stablecoin. Stablecoin backed by other coins. We've got sort of AI management of the collateral pool, looking for yield optimization and sort of depeg risk minimization. The other one is a completely different vertical. It's sort of the AI evolution of brands on chain. So we call it AI-led blockchain. So the ABCs of brands, AI-led, blockchain-powered, and community-driven. So think Hello Kitty, think Dora the Explorer, think Super Mario Brothers. We're starting with our own brand, which is a virtual music artist, and users have the ability. The hook is basically smart casual gaming and music. The founder is sort of an old DJ, etc. So that's kind of an interesting one, maybe a different vertical, and I'd love to pick that up with someone later on. But my question is actually unrelated to all of that. So my question had more to do with account abstraction and some of the interesting things I'm seeing. I think you already mentioned the wallet that popped up on, what was it, the example you gave earlier, where
Privy.
they got 80,000.
Oh, Farcaster. Yeah.
A Farcaster, yeah. So I think you've got something similar with Simulacrum on Twitter, X. So everyone's basically got an embedded wallet on Twitter if you want to use it. It's I think you just have to activate Simulacrum, I think it's called, and you can provide natural language instructions. So you can say, what is my base balance? Can you bridge across to Solana? Can you do this? Can you do that? And you just sort of type it in, and it executes. It kind of ties in with something I was looking at with, some DeFi products and bridging, etc. Sometimes bridging is a little bit beyond me. I'm not technical, but you've got Infinix sort of popping up. I think it's sort of built by Kane, the guy behind Synthetics, where they're basically what's it?
Yeah, Kane Warwick.
Yep. Yeah, Kane Warwick, is it? Okay. And he's building Infinix, which I guess is a sort of a browser-based aggregation of DeFi protocols where you can go in. I'm not sure if it's got natural language instructions or not, but basically you don't need to interact with the underlying dApps themselves. You just do it via their web browser, and it sort of gives you this almost like a centralized exchange experience where you're dealing with underlying sort of DeFi. So, between all those sort of little pieces there that are kind of related, account abstraction, doing away with some of the technicals, natural language instructions, and I guess having that front end, I suppose you call it. I'm just wondering if that's an emergent thing for you, or am I a little bit late to the game here, or how do you position?
No, I think it's. I mean, look, the way I see it, it's. I think about those in almost like design patterns, right? I think that design pattern is fairly recent. The technology for it is probably a couple of years old now. It's been sort of in development, very, very it's super. It was like the one big push for Ethereum. And yeah, you see that design pattern. I think it's totally here to stay. I actually think, if anything, that we're still very early in the design space. I think most wallet experiences don't quite make sense. I think we're in this like weird in between, like UX in between, right? For wallets. This idea that you have like this, I don't know, browser extension that you open. It's just very clunky, right? I can't imagine us as an industry and as users settling on this as the global maximum in terms of how good the UI gets. So yeah, I think that's the short answer. I think
sorry,
I think it's early.
I didn't really put a clear question to you, so sorry if I
No, I think it's a really interesting theme, right? It's I'll comment on the theme as well a little bit from my perspective, which is from the investor perspective, because I think it's great. Like it shows you. I think that it's difficult from our perspective, because this is obviously something we've been sort of very alive to for the past like 2.5, 3 years. But it's also like, how do you invest in that, right? Like, it's gonna happen. It's sort of the general direction of things. But even if you knew sort of, a couple of years ago, basically it was too late already, right? It's like Privy was funded, Infinix was funded. It's interesting. It's an interesting thought exercise, right? To be right on the thesis, but also be right on the trade, which I guess from our perspective is the investment. From perspective of founders is, well, their investment of time into a product and an idea.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jamie, for the question. Does it answer your question, your broad question? Yeah, you're fine.
Yeah.
Okay, super.
Sort of just on the UX point. I think just one last point. I tried to open my Simulacrum wallet on X on Twitter, but of course I had to pre-fund it with some base. I think I didn't actually have any base, and then I realized how many steps I'd need to sort of get that in there. So I never actually got to play with it because I couldn't afford the gas. I couldn't find the gas fees. And I think this is where Infinix comes up, with a sponsored gas fee model, where basically you can bridge across and do all this stuff on SPM and EVM chains, and all the gas is sponsored by Infinix for a fee.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't bring that up, Raph, as a major UX pain. I think to me it's probably the biggest one. That's if I have a 5 out of 5, 5.5 out of 5, that'd be the one. It's like I just spun up an Infinix wallet, a new one. It's in front of me, $0 in it.
Okay.
That's a horrible experience, right?
I have 7 questions I want to ask you, and I have like 20 questions from people who registered that I wanted to ask you as well. And Gaz was one of them. So
okay. I front run. That's good. I see Ali.
Okay.
You unmuted yourself. I presume that's for a question, right?
Me? Hi. How are you?
I'm great.
Wonderful. I was actually enjoying listening to your story, and actually your very broad information. I also sent a question in my registration, and I wanted to see, how do you see the UX for the health agents in the Web3 era will look like, and how do you see this transformation? Because we are developing a health AI agent ourselves. We have a coin related to that called Dr. Pal. And we've been working on it. So this actually UI, UX, both, they have been one of our concerns. And we are trying different ways to try to make sure that people are comfortable. They're trusting it, at the same time they're feeling safe when they're dealing with it. Meanwhile, it has to be user-friendly and all these things. I just wanted to know, how do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, A, it's an awesome product to see, and I love to hear more. B, I think controversial, but in this case, I actually don't think trust is the issue. And I'm not even sure that being comfortable is the issue. I think people need to get value very fast out of the agent. And if you're able to provide this, I think people are generally, this idea of like stated preference between versus revealed preferences, right? Like most people say they're super sensitive about health data, and then you use Oura Ring, and you have absolutely no idea where that data is going. But why you use it? Because you're getting a lot of value out of it, or at least you think you're getting a lot of value, which is even more beautiful, a business model. But so I think that's the first thing I'd say is, like, if I were in your shoes, I think the problem to optimize for, the real hard thing to solve for, is how can I deliver value super, super fast with sort of minimal friction to the user. The second point, and I'm kind of riffing out loud because your product has its specificities and I don't know them, and you're much deeper than I am. But one thing I think that's very important, and is a mistake that I think we see a lot when it comes to the AI stuff,
Oh,
is to make conversational interfaces. And this is a little bit of a controversial sort of take, but I think conversational interfaces are they're a failure mode of products. By which I mean they're basically the lazy option. And there's, if you think about UX for a second, the principle I would abide by is this idea of like speed to value for the user, and minimal friction to the value. And if you take that as the core principle, you realize very quickly that having people write stuff is a massive A, friction, and B, that slows things down pretty significantly. Like the amount of time it takes, just Siri, right? The amount of time it takes you to open Siri and hey Siri, what time is it in San Francisco? Versus, to you click the weather app and you see what weather it is. It's like way slower, right? So like all of that say, we see that error very often to opt for conversational interfaces with AI, when in many cases it's there's way better things. I'll give you a simple example here that I would take a lot of inspiration from. I mean, even happy to show my screen, but the one thing I'd offer is, one alternative is reports. Like, these agents are insane at building reports. You put in data, you get in data continuously, but once a day or twice a day or once a week, probably better once or twice a day, you give me a report. Not even maybe numbers, but it's like, hey, here's what's going on. Here's what you need to know. A little bit like, I don't know, I'm sure many of you played video games. People that like strategy video games, they love to handle their business like a video game, right? Like Civilization, or like Rome, Total War, where you get these daily reports and then you need to take actions, based on what came in. It's like, hey, the queen of this country just made an alliance with, the Helvetic Confederation, and, how are you going to react to this type of stuff? I think that's a great UI for agents, and it's one that's been extremely, in my opinion, underexplored, and something that for health, I think would make a ton of sense.
No, so you basically, what you're saying is that things. So basically, you're saying we have to move on from the chatbots in general.
I think we will. I don't think it's like we have to. I think it's like market force will make it so that we move away from this interface, at least for many use cases. Not for all, right? There'll still be a couple where it makes sense, but generally, yeah, I think we're this is more and more the direction of flight, in my opinion.
So even if with the ones with the speech recognition and the one which are giving you the ability of actually conversation.
Let me put it differently. Basically, once again, I don't know your product, but I presume that what is hard in what you do isn't to give the agent the ability to chat with me. That's easy. Anyone can do it. I can probably spin up a chatbot now in 35 seconds. What is hard is how you handle the data. What is hard is what you make of the data. What is hard is the specific prompting that you use to find insight in the data. And my contention, and right, once again, I think this is not even advice, because I don't know your company, so I can't advise it. But my hypothesis is there are more efficient ways than purely conversational interface to surface this information to users. And then maybe if they have additional questions, if they want to know more, maybe you can have that option somewhere. But I suspect that they actually don't want to chat with something else.
Thanks for the answer.
No, interesting point of view.
You have a follow-up question, Ali, or maybe we can move on to Alexi, who apparently has something to ask to Luke, right?
Yeah, thank you. Hi Luke, nice to meet you. I'm Alexi. I'm a advisor to companies in the fintech Web3 who seek to raise capital. I've been a VC fintech investor prior to that in my career, briefly, based in Zug. Question for you, it's a bit of a debate, right, as to go to liquid token strategies, how much of it is linked to market dynamics or discounts provided to early backers?
Yeah.
Real kind of top line growth. So I come from the TradFi world. So for me, custom experience generates more customer in terms of volume, more volume of activity, and therefore more revenue growth, right?
Yeah.
So how do you guys, when you invest into something, assess the investability from a custom experience perspective? How do you assess returns, for example?
And when you say custom experience, what do you mean? You mean like the actual user experience, like how good the product is, or am I reading too much into this? Yeah.
No. So you do your memo, right?
Yeah.
How do you guys say this is quality, therefore it's top line growth, so it's bottom line growth, so it's returns for me?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think a lot more people should ask themselves these questions in this industry. I mean, let me preface it by addressing kind of the point you were making around sort of the general market, right? There's multiple ways to play the venture game in crypto, and in some funds cases, the game is a, I would say, shorter term game where you understand there is a liquid market, you will have some sense of how this liquid market behaves, and you have some sense of how to package financial assets in a way that will resonate with it. And so these funds it's not just momentum traders, they're almost like asset creators to some extent, right? They create the momentum and benefit from it. Our strategy is very different. So we operate from the belief that there is a new technology and a new computing platform, and that this sort of technology shift coincides very luckily with a consumer value shift in terms of what people want to do on the internet, how they consume information, the type of stuff they want to see. It's a bit vague, but that's still that space of vagueness, right, where you don't exactly know what's going to emerge, but you know something is about to emerge, is where generational companies are built, right? So then the question is, okay, what are the traits of these companies? Once again, if it was programmatic, I think my job would be a lot easier. Our underwriting at the stage we invest in is very largely premised on the teams, right? So that's probably most of the underwriting and the thinking and the time that goes into making these investments is mostly relationship building and just getting a sense of who people are. I like to say, the due diligence we do and the memo we do is the last 10% of the job, right? Like the 90%, they are we're closing our first investments now from this fund. Both founders I've been personally working with for over a year now. And so, the memo and the diligence, it's like, we add a level of formality to it, but the work's been done already, right? So that's the first component. Now, on the specific question that you asked, which is how do we underwrite and how do we think about the product itself? It's an interesting and hard question. I think there's two answers here. The first is we're more interested by the unique insights that these founders have on which they're building their product. Usually the stage we invest at, the product end up being very different than what they started out to be, that set out to be. But what doesn't change, from my experience, is the way founders think about building a product. And so what we check, I think, and what we like to get confidence on is less, do I think this product makes sense? And more, how do we get to this product? What is the core insight? What is the founder seeing? Is he seeing or is she seeing something that is true about the world? Kind of true and unnoticed type of, unobvious truth type of stuff. Or is this someone who is building, I'm sure you've seen many founders like this that I think whenever you ask yourself, wouldn't it be cool if, usually that means this is not a great company idea or you're not the person to build it. This is very rarely how, these things happen, right? And so, yeah, I think that's my answer to your question. I think the product itself and like the kicking around and where the buttons are and the UX, we treat as a symptom to something that is much more important to us, and that is how the founder, is this a quality founder that can think clearly about their product and about the world.
So thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, no, I think I was following the same approach as you.
Yeah,
At least for the
beautiful.
product founder fit, right? Like Sequoia puts it, or A16.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
it is about the funny feature,
Oh, for
and
sure.
I still
for
believe the
sure,
features
for
can
sure.
always be improved, right? At the end of the day,
Yeah.
get the right people to put something great together.
If there's like one thing business school taught me, I don't know if you went, if any of you went to business school, I'm sure many did. The one thing that it taught me was that, put a bad team together with the best idea possible in the world and find a way to fuck it up. And you put a great team together, they will find a way to make a bad idea into a good one and execute well. So yeah, 100%.
Thanks for the question, Alexi, and the answer, Luke. Maybe we will go back a bit more into UX mode, which is the topic of the day. We went a bit larger, which was interesting because we got your perspective, Luke. Actually, we got some questions from a few people who didn't manage to connect now, but asked the question in the form. I'm trying live to aggregate those questions that overlap a bit. Basically, what they are asking is, do we see what types of key metrics and KPIs can we port from Web 2 to Web 3, and what are new KPIs and metrics to assess whether the UX is good or bad for a Web 3 product? So, for instance, talking about the UX, you could think about the UI where you would test buttons, colors, blah, 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 etc. You would get some heat maps to see how people are moving, the mouse, etc. So those are basic UI stuff that you would assess that may be likely portable to a Web3 interface. But what they are asking you is what types of new KPIs specific to Web3 could complement those Web2 KPIs that we would be porting from Web 2 to Web 3?
That's a great question. It's a great question. I think these metric conversations are also really hard to have out of context, in my opinion. The one KPI that I would always be extremely, where I am personally very alive to and want to see good is user retention. That's the most important thing. And then there's like a variety of ways you can measure that. I think simple is good here. The simple stuff like DAU to MAU ratios, or just simply cohort analysis. First week of the month, someone joins, are they still there at the end of the month? Yes, no, right? And then you get a percentage, you get your churn and retention rate. And, these things, they're super simple. They're very easy to count. They're table stakes in Web 2. They're not in Web 3. Actually, we never speak about them in Web 3. You'd be surprised. All founders, when they have traction, it's always user numbers. That's what you get. You get user number. Or we have like 1 million user, 1 million accounts created. Well, which is mental, actually. Now that I realize I should be a lot more, I think, opinionated about that being a really terrible measure. So that's the one. The first part of the question. That's the one I would pick. Anything related to retention, and honestly, you can pretty much safely ignore everything else until you've solved that, in my opinion. The second one, which is Web3 specific, two parts, two answers there. The first is general, the second specific. The general one is, to me, what's unique about Web3 is less decentralization, less cyberpunk. I mean, all that is important and great, and I think it got a lot of people in. From a purely product and business model perspective, what is unique is just finance rails that are interwoven with information rails. And the ability to do minuscule transactions. You can pay, you know, tenths of a cent, and you know that kind of makes sense economically. And it's the only place where it makes sense economically. And you have this programmability that makes it so that you can sort of engineer business models in a very different way. The point though is, so you have this money and information type of technology. So how about you make money? And that's like the second, so that's like the to me the second big metric. And in reality, I think the more things go, the more this is the only metric that makes sense to look at. It's just money made. You know, I give you an illustration here. One ecosystem. Are any of you guys familiar with Ronin and the Ronin ecosystem? Like, are you users? Are you like, you know, have you played any of these games?
I'm not a user, but who's playing those games? Who is
Nope.
active in this ecosystem? No.
Well, is anyone? Yeah, it doesn't seem like anyone is on there. Well, doesn't matter. These guys are printing. You know, there's a bunch of games that are making tens of millions in revenue. So that's interesting. Like, what's going on here? I think this is the type of stuff that pricks my interest, because, you know, I know Farcaster sort of inside and out. That's like the probably the ecosystem I know the best and the most, and the data and like how many users, real users, fake users. I have a very good sense of that. And so whenever I see, you know, product tell me like we have 1 million users, I've also a good sense of the comps. And the reality is all these numbers become increasingly meaningless because you don't know what's driving them. You don't know if it's real users. You don't know where these users come from. You don't know if these users are, you know, high-paying users versus low-paying users. And so yeah, just revenue, I think increasingly is like the one thing that is really hard to game because people are giving you money. And so that's the one thing I would track more in Web3. And the second part of the answer, the second leg here is on the KPIs in Web3, is I think this is precisely what we have to invent. And I think this is how we win in Web3 is by coming up with these new KPIs. Because that means we'll have found new business models. And you know, that's the Clanker. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Clanker. It's a token launcher on Base. It's a very interesting and successful product. They've launched a bunch of tokens that went to really high valuations, which is kind of what you want from a token launcher. And what's really interesting is they have this economic model where the token creators, which can be meme coin creators, but very often are actually also real companies behind them. The way they monetize is through a trading fee. And so suddenly you have this company that has this new KPI, which is trading fee gotten from the trading volume, which is directly linked to attention. And so that KPI of trading volume is super important. And it's one that doesn't exist in Web 2, exists in Web 3. And because you have this like small trading fee capture and distribution to the creator, it's a massively significant number. And in the case of Clanker, by the way, it's 25.
They made 9 million, right? Since the
No,
launch?
more,
More than
a
that?
lot more. Yeah, they made
Okay.
25 million total since launching in November. And then this is split, maybe the 9 million comes from there because this is then split between creators and the protocol.
Yeah, very clear. Thanks for the clarification and for the illustration. Jonas, you had a question that you mentioned in the form. Maybe you want to ask it live, and maybe you forgot it. But if you still have it in mind, please take the mic and ask your questions. Otherwise, I have it in front of me. So please feel free. Jonas, if you're here.
Yeah, do you hear me?
Yeah,
Perfect.
loud and clear.
Okay, nice. So nice to meet you guys. So just to introduce me, I'm Jonas. I'm 27, living in Switzerland, and I'm currently working with a gaming project and advising an AI one. Been into Web3 for like 4 to 5 years. And yeah, my question was about do you think, or what's your point on especially within the gaming ecosystem where we already know that the acquisition is pretty hard when it comes to Web2 players. And this is the situation we are quite facing in my company, because we had some traction in the traditional fields. And it's like, should we try to, in a sense, teach them what is Web3 and really create funnels to teach them more Web3, or should we, as we know, it clearly doesn't really make sense, in my opinion, to do so, but really to get through UX and UI to abstract totally the Web3 part and just making it works without them even knowing they are using blockchain and stuff like this.
And here we are taking the context of gaming, right? Because maybe the answer will be different for another type of sector.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I like the question a lot. So basically, the question is like, do we hide? Do we hide that do we stay in the closet that this is a crypto project, or are we, so do we lean into that? I think the answer is both, to be honest. I think both can work. Both can work very well. I have to say I am more excited by games that lean. It's hard. Honestly, it's hard to say. But I'm really excited on games that lean very heavily into blockchain. Actually, I think it's a mistake to. Or put it differently, not necessarily a mistake, but I think it's really difficult to build stuff that is very similar to Web2 with crypto rails on top. I think, we have a very unique set of infrastructure pieces. Let's use them to the maximum. Let's kind of push at the limit, right? So I mean, there was this one game, for instance, that I think was a brilliant experiment, that I made a lot of money as well, revenue, and I think in a way that it was very, I liked it because it wasn't grifty at all. It was this game called World PvP. I don't know if you remember it. It was created probably like a year ago now, maybe a bit less, like 6-8 months ago, when there was this like country meta and trading in the trenches. So, people were trading these tokens, the Swiss token, the French token. There's this like country trading meta for like 48 hours probably. And it gave these founders this idea of building a game where each country had a token which you could buy. And after, there was a bunch of epochs, right? I think every day or every few hours. And by the way, the mechanism was that at the end of each epoch, the country with the highest token valuation would then be able to nuke one country and take their treasury. And it was great. Like, people loved this game, and these guys made like, I don't know, 2 million just from trading fees in 14 days or 15 days. And I was like, I think that was brilliant. It leaned totally into crypto. Like, it's like as crypto native as it gets. And it's probably one of the funniest game that crypto's created, to be honest. Like the rest, I don't think the rest has been particularly funny to play for anyone just yet. So sorry, it's a bit of a mumbo jumbo. I'm thinking out loud. Two core blocks to my thinking here. One is, I think you can succeed in doing both, although I like the very crypto native gaming approach. Crypto the game is another great example, in my opinion. The second is
maybe, sorry to step in,
Yeah.
but maybe there is also like a consideration to have as to whether it is a casual, hyper casual, and maybe here the answer will be different.
Yeah, that's a good nuance. The second piece I would say is like, just make it fun, right? And that's the part that's super hard. I think you can make a fun game that's outside of crypto, although I think it's harder because the competition is really hard. I think you can make insanely fun games in crypto, and there's just not a lot of creativity going on.
We have like 1 or 2 more minutes for one last question. Has everyone or anyone, sorry, like a burning last question to ask to Luc?
Maybe can I just go further with one question? Yeah,
Please, please.
because basically, I think I do agree with you when it came to really lean into Web3 stuff. But then, shouldn't we make the difference between the different acquisition canals, funnels, when it comes? Because I can get some ways to do it when we truly speak to Web3 already users and stuff like this to really lean on Web3 tech and stuff like this. But when it also we know that our user base, in our case, for example, is really more traditional and casual. I view it really more difficult to really lean into Web3 without having some stuff like this. What do you think about the acquisition funnel? If we should really split both or try to merge them, or is it really, because I do believe that if we manage to have a great UX and UI, especially UI, we will then manage to merge both and really speak to both ecosystem.
Yeah, I think that's the part that's hard. I think you kind of have to pick your lane. Let me ask you a question, actually, because I think it's going to be important. Like, why do you guys have any Web3 component to this at all? I mean, it sounds like you're not targeting Web3 people. Like, is Web3 an important part here, or is it like just here for legacy reasons?
So basically, it is because Web3 was the best solution we had to just counter the problems we had when it comes to we had especially logistical problem, because we had to send gift and stuff like this when the user base was mostly in India, Africa, and stuff like this, where people didn't really have addresses, and it was really costly. And then also because based in Switzerland, we can't just send money like Swiss franc and stuff like this. So to give value, token and crypto was the easiest and best way to do so.
But a follow up here, do you have to give money for people to want to play your game?
I mean, yeah, because it is part of our game. If you want, it's a treasure hunt where you just have to go outside, do quest, and then be rewarded for this. When we were fully traditional, it was like with PlayStation, you could win a bike and stuff like this. So this is the base of our game. Just give value for people that want to do quest and go outside and have fun in a gamified way.
Okay. Yeah, well, I mean, it sounds like, yeah, it sounds like Web3 is for you guys not a core part of the gameplay, right? It feels like it's almost like the payment infrastructure that you guys use.
Yeah.
And so I think with that in mind, I would totally abstract it away, right? I would make it a super nice, simple UI, embedded wallets. People don't have to think about that, and they receive USDC. I have to make it easy for them to cash it out.
Sure.
But yeah, it doesn't sound like you need to push it on them, right?
Yeah, totally agree. Then we also, just maybe to explain a bit further, we also,
then we'll have to say thanks to Luc, because we are
okay, sure. Yeah, we wanted to add a special Web3 component like gamification and socialify, because we think that there is a lot to do as actually socialify and things like this are really boring in my opinion. So yeah, wanted to gamify it and also giving us more reason to go deeper in Web3. But yeah, maybe then I join on what you said before, that we just have to split both and really go one way, then afterward maybe thinking about developing another way.
Yeah. Or just doubling down on the one that works, right?
Sure.
Superb. Thanks,
Cool.
Jonas, for the context and the questions. I have the impression that, Jamie, you want to ask a question to Luc, but maybe you can directly talk to Luc afterwards, either using the Farcaster platform or any other means of interaction. that could be a good means, to onboard a new user on Farcaster. To ask question to Luc.
Yeah. Not the best use case of Farcaster, but it's one use case of Farcaster.
It's a growing
for sure.
use case, but
Yeah.
starting from a low base. Thanks so
Cool.
much, Luc, for being here, for being authentic and open to answering many different types of questions. You can follow Luc on Farcaster. So his name
that's
is
the best
Luc.
place to find me. Exactly. warpcast.com/Luc, LUC, and just hit me up with a DM. I'd be happy to answer you.
Yeah, I just want to pre-announce that on June the 12th, we will have VC Office Hours number 3 with Eleanor.
Paradigm.
With Eleanor from Fabric. She's based in London, and she's the head of the platform at Fabric in London. So
Nice.
she'll talk about marketing tactics and strategies, including event strategy. Unfortunately, it will be like 2 weeks after token 2049, where a lot of startups may be willing to sponsor some events or do some gigs over there. So it will happen afterwards, but we know that the Web3 industry is, let's say, plagued by events. We have too many events. So, I mean, you will have this opportunity to implement what she will be advising to you next month. So Eleanor from Fabric, head of platform, topic, marketing strategies and tactics, and event strategy. So thanks again, Luc. Thanks again, everyone, for being here today. We're slightly over time, but I think it was a very interesting one.